The Isha Upanishad, translated by Aurobindo. All this is for habitation by the Lord. Whatever is individual universe of movement in the universal motion. By that renounced thou shouldst enjoy. Lust not after any man's possession. Doing verily works in this world, one should wish to live 100 years. Thus it is in thee, and not otherwise than this. Action cleaves not to a man. Sunless are those worlds and enveloped in blind gloom, whereto all they in their passing hence resort, who are slayers of their souls. One unmoving, that is faster, swifter than mind, that the gods reach not, for it progresses ever in front, that standing passes beyond all others as they run. In that the Master of Life establishes the waters, that moves and that moves not, that is far and the same is near, that is within all this, and that also is outside all this. But he who sees everywhere the self in all existences, and all existences in the self, shrinks not thereafter from aught. He in whom it is the self-being that has become all existences that are becomings, for he has the perfect knowledge. How shall he be deluded? Whence shall he have grief who sees everywhere oneness? It is he that has gone abroad, that which is bright, bodiless, without scar of imperfection, without sinews, pure, unpierced by evil. The seer, the thinker, the one who becomes everywhere. The self-existent has ordered objects perfectly according to their nature, from years semp-eternal. Into a blind darkness they enter who follow after the ignorance. They as if into a greater darkness who devote themselves to knowledge alone. Other, verily it is said, is that which comes by the knowledge, other than that which comes by the ignorance. This is the law we have received from the wise, who have revealed that to our understanding. He who knows that, has both in one, the knowledge and the ignorance, by the ignorance crosses beyond death, by the knowledge enjoys immortality. Into a blind darkness they enter, who follow after the non-birth, they as if into a greater darkness who devote themselves to birth alone. Other, verily, it is said, is that which comes by the birth, other that which comes by the non-birth. This is the law we have received from the wise, who have revealed that to our understanding. He who knows that as both in one, the birth and the dissolution of birth, by the dissolution crosses beyond death, and by the birth enjoys immortality. The face of truth is covered with a brilliant golden lid, that do thou remove, O fosterer, for the law of the truth, for sight. O fosterer, O soul seer, O ordainer, O illumining sun, O power of the Father of creatures, marshal thy rays, draw together thy light, the lustre which is thy most blessed form of all of all, that in thee I behold, the Purusha there and there. He am I. The breath of things is an immortal life, but of this body ashes are the end. O will, remember that which was done, remember. O will, remember that which was done, remember. O God Agni, knowing all things that are manifested, lead us by the good path to the felicity. Remove from us the devious attraction of sin. To thee, completest speech of submission, we would dispose. Supplied analysis and engagement of Sri Aurobindo. Prefatory Plan of the Upanishad. The Upanishads, being vehicles of illumination and not of instruction, composed for seekers who had already a general familiarity with the ideas of the Vedic and Vedantic seers, and even some personal experience of the truths on which they were founded, dispense in their style with expressed transitions of thought and the development of implied or subordinate notions. Every verse in the Isha Upanishad reposes on a number of ideas implicit in the text, but nowhere set forth explicitly. The reasoning also that supports its conclusions is suggested by the words, not expressly conveyed to the intelligence. The reader, or rather the hearer, was supposed to proceed from light to light, confirming his intuitions and verifying by his experience, not submitting the ideas to the judgment of the logical reason. To the modern mind, this method is invalid and inapplicable. It is necessary to present the ideas of the Upanishad in their completeness, underline the suggestions, supply the necessary transitions, and bring out the suppressed but always implicit reasoning. The central idea of the Upanishad, which is a reconciliation and harmony of fundamental opposites, is worked out symmetrically in 4 successive movements of thought. First movement. In the first, a basis is laid down by the idea of the one and stable spirit inhabiting and governing a universe of movement and of the forms of movement. Verse 1, line 1. On this conception, the rule of a divine life for man is founded. Enjoyment of all by renunciation of all through the exclusion of desire. Verse 1, line 2. Then there is then declared the justification of works and of the physical life on the basis of an inalienable freedom of the soul, one with the Lord, amidst the activity of the multiple movement. Verse 2. Finally, the result of an ignorant interference with the right manifestation of the one in the multiplicity is declared to be an involution in states of blind obscurity after death. Verse 3. Second movement. In the second movement, the ideas of the first verse are resumed and amplified. The one stable Lord and the multiple movement are identified as the one Brahman, of whom, however, the unity and stability are the higher truth, and who contains all as well as inhabits all. Verses 4 and 5. The basis and fulfillment of the rule of life are found in the experience of unity, by which man identifies himself with the cosmic and transcendental self, and is identified in the self, but with an entire freedom from grief and illusion, with all its becomings. Verses 6 and 7. Third movement. In the third movement there is a return to the justification of life and works, subject of verse 2, and an indication of their divine fulfillment. The degree of the Lord's self-manifestation in the universe of motion and in the becomings of the one being are set forth, and the inner law of all existence is declared to be by his conception and determination. Verse 8. Vidya and avidya, becoming and non-becoming, are reconciled by their mutual utility to the progressive self-realization which proceeds from the state of mortality to the state of immortality. Verses 9 through 14. Fourth movement. In the fourth movement returns to the idea of the worlds, and under the figures of Surya, sun, and Agni, fire, the revelations of the supreme truth in immortality. Verses 15 and 16, the activities of this life, verse 17, and the state after death, verse 18, are symbolically indicated. And then here, and most presently and purposefully, the whole illumination, as is correctly sensed, I believe, by Aurobindo and developed, rests on the exercise of this supreme and supernal expression, governance, Lord, uncaused cause, whose being is constituent and inclusive and determinate, sole occupation and essence of its own reality. And all the different facets, if nothing moves it, if nothing determines it, but it is the presence and place, foundation and resolution and recollection of cause, then, on the other aspect, it is the basis and cause for the movement of things. It is the omnific, the omnipresent, all-conditioning and all-containing and entire. So the opening of this intuition and its own processing of the poetry of the Vedas, of the witness of the seers, of the wise who have gone before, who to us have awoken this, is here processed in this way. And so the working out of Aurobindo continues. First movement, the inhabiting Godhead, life and action, verses 1 to 3. The basis of cosmic existence, God and the world, spirit and formative nature are confronted and their relations fixed. So to go to that verse 1, all this is for habitation by the Lord. So the complete inhabiting, the complete resolved determination, everything, whatever in individual universe of movement, in the universal motion, all particulars in the whole, are only realized by the inhabitation and fulfillment of in and of and through that whole. Cosmos. All world is a movement of the spirit in itself, and is mutable and transient in all its formations and appearances. Its only eternity is an eternity of recurrence, its only stability a semblance caused by certain apparent fixities of relation and grouping. Every separate object in the universe is, in truth, itself the whole universe, presenting a certain front or outward appearance of its movement. The microcosm is one with the macrocosm. Yet in their relation of principle of movement and result of movement, they are continent and contained, world in world, movement in movement. The individual therefore partakes of the nature of the universal, refers back to it for its source of activity, is, as we say, subject to the laws and part of cosmic nature. So that nothing else forces it means that its continent inclusive meaning and cause gives the fulfillment of the function of the universal in the particular, so that the particular is being submerged, subsumed, reconciled to the fulfillment of the ground of being, life of life, soul of soul awoken. And so in the exact parallel meditations which we'll find, but perhaps even in more fluid poetry in the Vedas, the perfect child exceeds the parentage, that which brings it into existence. And so an analogy in this sense could often, and is often, drawn to the wave and the ocean. So the wave is not a separate existence to the ocean, is not a separate existence to the water. It is a transition in and of and through. It's a moment of the whole. But if there is no alienated conditioning to this whole, then the fulfilled reflection, the fulfilled cause, the complete termination, partakes of the universal past the accidents of the individual or particular. So every separate object in the universe is, in truth itself, the whole universe, presenting a certain front or outward appearance of its movement. And so the same intuition, which, for instance, was at the course and cause of, say, an Emerson's awakening mind to the way we should attach and realize to the soul of things, equally was essential to those of the ancient Greeks, of the Renaissance, even of Newton, who, in this foundation of being's connection and relation, could alone come to the truth that uses all the functions to its fulfilled witness and cause and soul and founding. And just, we can treat that just so it's not just my words. This is from the General Scholium. We must remember, of course, that Galileo Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake. Galileo was imprisoned for impinging too much on matters of divinity, even in a tangential way, and was kept under house imprisonment. And the interior, you could say, pious, fulfilling speculations of open expression for that reason were lost. And so we know that Newton talked about these divine measures. His mind and thought were filled with it in his speculations. He made his own translations of portions of the Hermetic corpus, which were meditations on these similar conditions. But near the end of his days, he allowed himself the freedom to write the following in the General Scholium, which was introduced. This being governs all things, not as the soul of the world, but as Lord over all. Isha is Lord. And on account of his dominion, he is wont to be called Lord God, Pantocrator, or universal ruler. For God is a relative word and has respect to servants, and deity is the dominion of God, not over his own body, as those who fancy God to be the soul of the world, but over servants. The supreme God, so here as the part has to be the communion to the unbroken whole. The supreme God is a being eternal, infinite, absolutely perfect, but a being however perfect without dominion cannot be said to be Lord God. For we say, my God, your God, the God of Israel, the God of gods, the Lord of lords, but we do not say my eternal, your eternal, the eternal of Israel, the eternal of gods. We do not say my infinite or my perfect. These are titles which have no respect to servants. The word God usually signifies Lord, but every Lord is not a God. It is the dominion of a spiritual being which constitutes a God. A true, supreme, or imaginary dominion makes a true, supreme, or imaginary God, and from his true dominion it follows that the true God is a living, intelligent, and powerful being. And from his other perfections, that he is supreme or most perfect. He is eternal and infinite, omnipotent and omniscient. That is, his duration reaches from eternity to eternity, his presence from infinity to infinity. He governs all things and knows all things that are or can be done. In the words of the Vedas, he is wide. He contains dimension and presence, self-cause and measure. He is not eternity and infinity, but eternal and infinite. He is not duration and space, but he endures and is present. He endures forever and is everywhere present, and by existing always and everywhere, he constitutes duration and space. Since every particle of space is always, and every indivisible moment of duration is everywhere, certainly the Maker and Lord of things cannot be never and nowhere. Every soul that has perception is, though in different times and in different organs of sense and motion, still the same indivisible person. So here the undergirding person of the soul of things. The perfect son, the perfect birth, the object and child. There are given successive parts in duration, coexistent parts in space, but neither the one nor the other in a person of a man or his thinking principle, and much less can they be found in the thinking substance of God. Every man, so far as he is a thing that has perception, is one and the same man during his whole life, in all and each of his organs of sense, so through all instruments of function, and which are united in that continent cause. God is the same God, always and everywhere. He is omnipresent, not virtually only, but substantially. For virtue cannot subsist without substance. In him are all things contained and moved, yet neither affects the other, the motion or the containment, the still or the transient. God suffers nothing from the motion of bodies. Bodies find no resistance from the omnipresence of God. 'Tis allowed by all that the supreme God exists necessarily, and by the same necessity he exists always and everywhere. Whence also he is all similar, all eye, all ear, all brain, all arm, all power to perceive, to understand, and to act, all being culminated in the residence and reality of itself. We can mirror this to the Kena Upanishad. At the very beginning, what soars forth, what the mind projected, what calls forth the earliest breathing, what divinity roused unto and for these speech, these words, do people utter. Whence also he is all similar, all eye, all ear, all brain, all arm, all power to perceive, to understand, and to act, but in a manner not at all human, in a manner not at all corporeal, in a matter utterly unknown to us. So this foundation of the divine ground, of self-cause that contains and is the root and condition of all things. As a blind man has no idea of colors, so have we no idea of the manner in which the all-wise God perceives and understands all things. He is utterly void of all body and bodily figure, and can therefore neither be seen nor heard nor touched, nor ought he to be worshipped under the representation of any corporeal thing. We have ideas of his attributes, but what the real substance of anything is, we know not. In bodies we see only their figures and colours, we hear only the sounds, we touch only their outward surfaces, we smell only the smells and taste the savours, but their inward substances are not to be known, either by our senses or by any reflex act of our minds. Much less then have we any idea of the substance of God. We know him not only by his most wise and excellent contrivances of things and final causes, we admire him for his perfections, but we reverence and adore him on account of his dominion, this continual reality and rule. We adore him as his servants, and a God without dominion, providence, and final causes is nothing else but fate and nature, no inhabitant to the full communion of truth. Blind metaphysical necessity, which is certainly the same always and everywhere, could produce no variety of things, could give no intensifying, living and informing realization. All that diversity of natural things which we find, suited to different times and places, could arise from nothing but the ideas and will of a being necessarily existing. By way of an allegory, God is said to see, to speak, to laugh, to love, to hate, to desire, to give, to receive, to rejoice, to be angry, to fight, to frame, to work, to build. For all our notions of God are taken from the ways of mankind, by a certain similitude, which, though not perfect, has some likeness, however. And thus much concerning God, to discourse of whom from the appearances of things does certainly belong to natural philosophy. And so the central and essential reliance upon this as the continent condition of realization and cause, not only for an Emerson, not only for a Parmenides or Heraclitus or Pythagoras, but for a Newton, for a Galileo, for a Bruno, for all that which gives the foundation for the possibility of our connection of things to the unforced reality of our truth and the truth unto itself, has in the brightest times always been appreciated to such communion and source and station. And like I said, mirroring again exactly what was said here, every separate object in the universe is, in truth itself, the whole universe presenting a certain front or outward appearance of its movement. So if the whole does not reside there, if the unconditioned, uncaused reality, what would be the possible conveyance, communion, and recollection of cause to its full continent place and soul of purpose. The microcosm is one with the macrocosm. Next section. Spirit. Spirit is lord of its movement, one, immutable, free, stable and eternal. The movement with all its formed objects has been created in order to provide a habitation for the Spirit, who, being one, yet dwells multitudinously in the multiplicity of his mansions. It is the same Lord who dwells in the sum and in the part, in the cosmos as a whole and in each being, force or object in the cosmos. Since he is one and indivisible, the Spirit in all is one, and their multiplicity is a play of his cosmic consciousness. He is the eternal now, at the epicenter of presence and condition and cause, unalienated in what is its own fulfilled expression, being and reality, and not abstraction, for the qualities would be purposeless and hollow if it was not the real and competent substance. The virtue would be a quality if it was not substantial. The dominion and rule would not be real if there was not the dimensions integrating and serving, fulfilling unto the truth of that undivorced reality. Therefore each human being is in his essence one with all others, free, eternal, immutable, Lord of nature. We'll find the same intuitions in Emerson, recollected, no doubt, through a similar, if not the exact same cause in his acquaintance and forming acquaintance with the same expressions of the Upanishads. Transitional thought. Avidya. The object of habitation is enjoyment and possession. The object of the Spirit in cosmos is, therefore, the possession and enjoyment of the universe. Yet being thus in his essence one, divine and free, man seems to be limited, divided from others, subject to nature and even its creation and sport, enslaved to death, ignorance, sorrow. His object in manifestation being possession and enjoyment of his world, he is unable to enjoy because of his limitation. This contrary result comes about by avidya, the ignorance of oneness, and the knot of the ignorance is egoism. Ego. The cause of ego is that while by its double power of vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance, the Spirit dwells at once in the consciousness of multiplicity and relativity, and in the consciousness of unity and identity, and is therefore not bound by the ignorance, yet it can, in mind, identify itself with the object in the movement, absorbingly, to the apparent exclusion of the knowledge which remains behind, veiled at the back of the mentality. The movement of mind in nature is thus able to conceive of the object as the reality and the inhabitant as limited and determined by the appearances of the object. It conceives of the object not as the universe in one of its frontal appearances, but as itself a separate existence, standing out from the cosmos and different in being from all the rest of it. It conceives similarly of the inhabitant. This is the illusion of ignorance which falsifies all realities. The illusion is called ahamkara, the separate ego sense which makes each being conceive of itself as an independent personality. The result of the separation is the inability to enter into harmony and oneness with the universe, and a consequent inability to possess and enjoy it. But the desire to possess and enjoy is the master impulse of the ego, which knows itself obscurely to be the Lord, although owing to the limitations of its relativity, it is unable to realize its true existence. The result is discord with others and oneself, mental and physical suffering, the sense of weakness and inability, the sense of obscuration, the straining of energy in passion and in desire towards self-fulfillment, the recoil of energy exhausted or disappointed towards death and disintegration. Desire is the badge of subjection, with its attendant discord and suffering. That which is free, one and Lord, does not desire, but inalienably contains, possesses, and enjoys. The rule of the divine life. Enjoyment of the universe and all it contains is the object of world existence, but renunciation of all desire is the condition of the free enjoyment of all. The renunciation demanded is not a moral constraint of self-denial or a physical rejection, but an entire liberation of the spirit from any craving after the forms of things. The terms of this liberation are freedom from egoism, and consequently freedom from personal desire. Practically, this renunciation implies that one should not regard anything in the universe as a necessary object of possession, nor as possessed by another and not by oneself, nor as an object of greed in the heart or the senses. And so here, returning to the same meditation from which it also departs, and aligns and finds organic whole both in the Isha and its own contemplation. If that divine omnipresence, that unreverted and uncaused cause, is the essence and soul and entirety of everything, then it is the whole, it is the all, it is the competent and living and creative, unalienated and present capacity at the essence of things. Therefore, if the firing of the supreme fire, if the delivering of the supreme object is the inner inhabitation to the fulfillment of habitation of that eternal and continent cause, is supine and complete and supernal, it's not attachment to even the expressions or accidents of that condition which can come upon or impose itself to the truth and realization of it, any witness of reality. If the truly delivering cause and bright and fulfillment of that energy and purpose lies inalienably present to the soul and nature of you, any of the mere instances of that radiance have no need for attachment or possession. This attitude is founded on the perception of unity, for it has already been said that all souls are one possessing self, the Lord, and although the Lord inhabits each object as if separately, yet all objects exist in that self and not outside of it. So the fulfillment of function, the fulfillment of expression, always has this continent in meeting perfection that is inalienably present, containing, comprehending, and true. Therefore, by transcending ego and realizing the one self, that one truth and cause, commitment and communication of presence, we possess the whole universe in the one cosmic consciousness, the one primal supernity, and do not need to possess physically. Having by oneness with the Lord the possibility of an infinite free delight in all things, we do not need to desire. Being one with all beings, we possess in their enjoyment and in ours and in the cosmic beings delight of universal self-expression. So there is a continence in communion and drawing to completeness of presence and point, that everything called upon requires this integral realization, fulfillment, and founding. Being one with all beings, we possess in their enjoyment, in ours, and in the cosmic beings, delight of universal self-expression. It is only by this ananda, at once this bliss, eternal bliss, at once transcendent and universal, that man can be free in his soul, and yet live in the world with the full active life of the Lord in his universe of movement. The justification of works. This freedom does not depend upon inaction, nor is this possession limited to the enjoyment of the inactive soul that only witnesses without taking part in the movement. On the contrary, the doing of works in this material world in a full acceptance of the term of physical life are part of its completeness. For the active Brahman fulfills itself in the world by works, and man is also in the body for self-fulfillment by action. He cannot do otherwise, for even his inertia acts and produces effects in the cosmic movement. Being in this body or any kind of body, it is idle to think of refraining from action or escaping from physical life. The idea that this in itself can be a means of liberation is a part of the ignorance which supposes the soul to be a separate entity in the Brahman. So in this universal continence, there's also a continent inclusion of the full ambit and scope, gamut and domain of positive and integral communicating and consummating fulfilled existence through the foundational fulfilled expression of that reality in whole. The full expression of the equalization of the wave delivers the ownership of the fulfilled, unalienated elements reality. And this coming to this full communion, unlike the wave which has some measure of separation to give us a capacity of drawing an analogy, is unseparated to this truth and communion, cohesion at the source and soul of center of things and cause. Action is shunned because it is thought to be inconsistent with freedom. The man, when he acts, is supposed to be necessarily entangled in the desire behind the action, in subjection to the formal energy that drives the action and in the results of the action. These things are true in appearance, not in reality. Desire is only a mode of the emotional mind, which by ignorance seeks its delight in the object of desire and not in the Brahman who expresses himself in the object. By destroying that ignorance, one can do action without entanglement and desire. The energy that drives itself is subject to the Lord, who expresses himself in it with perfect freedom. By getting behind nature, to the Lord of nature, merging the individual in the cosmic will, one can act with divine freedom. Our actions are given up to the Lord, and our personal responsibility ceases in his liberty. So the direct communion at the very source and center, and the way it was translated by Aurobindo, is one full of permeation, that presence, that Lord, that reality and substantial condition of cause, the exercise and expression of the universe, is the unalienated self-sheath, the fulfillment in movement, in instantiation, of the full revelation of this transcendent and occupant reality and cause. And so coming to the competency and completeness of the whole transcends narrow angles and dimensions in the truth that is even the truth of the parts. For the habitation, the fulfilled residence of that is the supernal and unalienated truth at the soul and reality of all expression, manifestation, and witness. The chain of karma only binds the movement of nature and not the soul, which by knowing itself ceases even to appear to be bound by the result of its works. Therefore the way of freedom is not in action, but to cease from identifying oneself with the movement, and recover instead our true identity in the self of things, who is their Lord. The other worlds. By departing from the physical life, one does not disappear out of the movement, but only passes into some other general state of consciousness than the material universe. These states are either obscure or illuminated, some dark or sunless. By persisting in gross forms of ignorance, by coercing perversely the soul in its self-fulfillment, or by a wrong dissolution of its becoming in the movement, one enters into states of blind darkness, not into worlds of light and of liberated and blissful being. For this transition of the assumption of cause, this perpetual foundation of witness, by the nature of its relation to its life, hence prospers or is unfulfilled, attains communion with the principle of cause and light and energy and fulfilled purpose, or is contradicted in veils of darkness. End of the expostulation of the first section of the Isha Upanishad by Aurobindo.